Today in Agronomy on KFIL AM 1060 with Pioneer Field Agronomist Allie Wise and Josh Schaffner. Here's Josh and Allie.
Good morning, Southeast Minnesota. This is episode number 61. Josh, today is February 24th, 2021. So we've made it through the cold snap here, which is nice to see. It does make us really start focusing more on the fact that spring is coming and a lot quicker than maybe you expect when you actually put the days to the calendar of when we could potentially be planting. So that's going to be creeping up on us here. Obviously, we've talked a lot about all the different planning factors that we want to consider as we move into 2021. But on today's show, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. So for our jobs and as we work with our customers, drones and that technology have been a really big piece of what we do in the day-to-day. And I think it's a really big piece of, the agronomy services or the things that we're able to uncover and help with across your operations. It's really a booming technology, drones in themselves these days, but also some of the new technology and just the capabilities of those machines. But I've been flying drones for just a couple of years or so now, Josh. You have been kind of on the leading edge of Corteva, especially our drone fleet. Any thoughts on just kind of where we've been versus where we sit today and what it's taken to get here?
Yeah, it's a unique journey if you really look back at how this has developed, and I think if you think back to when they first came to market, maybe 6-7 years ago, it probably got to be a little bit more of a picture thing, and then we were maybe trying to do, could we get more infrared cameras, which was a lot of cost, and I think there was a balance of what wasn't enough versus maybe we were in way too far, and I think at Pioneer we've done a great job of really finding that balance in the middle. And obviously technology has advanced and made it more cost effective. But really in our perspective, we have an extremely large drone fleet within the company. We have, I don't know what the number of pilots, certified FAA pilots we are, but we probably have as many as any other ag company probably globally that we do. But I was fortunate to be kind of on some of the pilots of this as we were trying to develop some of our in-house stuff, but also utilize some things that were on the market. And I think, Allie, at Pioneer, I think one of our, maybe our best achievements is really, the stand assessment tool that we developed in-house. And we'll talk a little bit more about where that's going. Allie, we've had that commercially out for a couple of years and kind of branded that last year. And I thought overall, you think about doing stand counts. I mean, I never, stand counts can be a little tedious. It's great to look at stands. I think we're all guilty of, if we're going to pull stands, do we walk the field or pull stands fence line to fence line? I think we're all probably guilty of maybe not doing that. We're a UAV. I just look at it, Allie, think about us going out to pull the tape and doing a 1/1000th of an acre where, within 4 minutes, we can send a UAV and probably take, 30 to 40, 30 by 30 foot stand counts in an 80 or 100 acre chunk. And that's just wild of how much more ground we can cover. And also, just get a better analysis of it. It's unique. The picture quality is great, but just awesome technology out there. And it's been fun to see that develop. And it's fun that, Allie, we're, at Pioneer, we've been able to kind of be the leading edge of that. But just some great stuff out there. And we'll talk a little bit more about, kind of where that's going here in the future. Yeah.
So I think, the stand assessment tool in itself, this was, it's a proprietary tool that was developed by Corteva. As we move forward here, it was originally called Corteva Flight. Now our stand count tool, kind of stand count analytics tool, will be paired in with Drone Deploy. So if anyone's familiar with that technology, our stand count tool will now be rolled within Drone Deploy. So we're really excited about that collaboration. Not only does that allow us to just really keep those tools cutting edge and where they need to be in terms of functionality, but obviously we'll still be utilizing those between our Pioneer sales reps and ourselves here at Pioneer. But we're also excited that this also will give you, the customer, an opportunity to utilize this tool across your operation. So kind of unique in that way. The stand assessment tool in itself, you talked about, we go out and pull a tape and we maybe stop at 6 different parts in the field, but the ability to see the scope of an 80 acre field as a whole, I think is huge. There's no way you can cover every single inch of a particular field. So I think the efficiency of being able, like you said, send a drone out, it takes 4 minutes, comes back, you get 40 some pictures in these 30 by 30 foot scopes is huge, just to assess not only what does your stand look like across the field, to pick out some of those areas that could be lower than others. Where do we need to maybe look at adding in replant situations, where is our stand not a little off or where it needs to be. But I also think, our ability, we've got a lot of planner technology out there today, really important too, as you get done with planning, to just assess how was that planner doing in terms of spacing. And all these pictures that you get back are just very specific on down to the level of being able to pick out those gaps. You can set your gap threshold as little or as small as you want. And I just think it's a very modern approach to agronomy and making sure that we're assessing everything after planners are through the field.
Yeah, and the big thing, you kind of broke the news there. When I fly for customers, not every customer. There are some that's like, man, I wish I could do this myself, right? And sometimes, Allie, there's only two of us, so what's the scale of that? And I've had a lot of growers ask, is this something that I could have access to? And in the past, Allie, we weren't quite there, but now with our, we've been a partner with Drone Deploy and that going into one app. What a great way for us to make it simpler is a one app offer, but also what a great way for our growers to be able to get access to that. And when we come out of break, we'll get into some more details and maybe talk about, how a grower could maybe get out there and get access to these tools on the open market. Welcome back, listeners. Allie, kind of a fun background of some things we've been doing with our UAVs and our drones through the last few years. And the one thing we kind of mentioned there at the end that with kind of our new partnership with Drone Deploy that this is available, if we have growers that have UAVs or thinking about maybe adding a UAV to their operation to kind of utilize it as a scouting tool or a way to collect more information. I think it's important since we reference that, maybe what would that process look like if there's a producer that's really interested in these great tools, how could they maybe do some research or kind of understand how they can get access to these tools, Allie?
Yeah, well, with anything, there are always going to be just kind of some minimum requirements of what that's going to look like. The first thing is that you're going to need to purchase a UAV that meets the requirements of being able to utilize a technology like Drone Deploy. So getting a UAV that meets those requirements, you'll then get signed up for Drone Deploy, which will allow you access to the tools that we're describing here on today's show. And then it's always important that as you're out flying these UAVs, Josh, both yourself and I are licensed to be flying our UAVs, but following just state and federal laws and guidelines is extremely important. So that's also a piece of the puzzle that you'll want to look into. So that's kind of a high level overview. Certainly though, with, understanding maybe what those UAV requirements would be, or where do you go to sign up for Drone Deploy, reach out to myself or Josh, your local Pioneer sales rep. We can help guide you in the direction of where you would go to source those minimum things that you're going to need to get started with this across your own operation. Is that a fair statement, Josh?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. And and I think the biggest call out there is understanding what the minimum requirements are. Certainly don't go buy a UAV thinking for sure it's going to work. And really what we're looking for is specific camera requirements is probably the big thing, Ellie, but I think that's a really important call out. And Ellie, we've been talking about Drone Deploy here a little bit. And in the past, we had our proprietary, stand assessment tool. And then we were also, we would utilize Drone Deploy, just maybe to provide a little context, Allie, you and I, our stand assessment, that's kind of our, I guess, depending on the growing season, maybe our late May, early June, the tool that we'd be utilizing, exclusively from our UAV standpoint for the most part. The Drone Deploy was probably something we're utilizing more once we get to crop canopy or beyond, but maybe just distinguishing, Allie, the two a little bit, just so our growers understand how each one can be utilized potentially for their operation.
Yeah, so for the stand count piece of the tool, on the corn side of things, when it comes to stand assessments, you're going to be looking to make those stand assessments in the V2 to V3 window. So that's actually counting each individual plant, and then it's identifying the gap that you set. On the soybean side of things, it's a little bit newer. So it's actually looking at, it's more around the kind of the V2 soybean time frame. That's looking at canopy coverage. So in soybeans, it's really going to help you identify where are those abnormally large gaps or issues with plant to plant spacing. That'll be really important on the stand count side of things. But in terms of the scouting fields and how Drone Deploy pieces into that, it's a really unique tool where you can set your flight path for the individual field. And then the drone actually will go up at the altitude that you set. And it essentially is taking hundreds of pictures along the way. And then after your flight, all those pictures are pieced together to give you a very high resolution image of that particular field. There's an NDVI component available within drone deploy as well, an elevation component, and a lot of different unique measuring tools that allow us even to go as far as making bunker inventory measurements at a tonnage level, if that's something that would be applicable to your operation. So a lot of different things that you can utilize within the drone deploy tool, aside from just the stand count assessments.
Yeah, and looking at, maybe reviewing, some common applications that we're utilizing drone deploy. Sometimes, Allie, it's just looking at, maybe there's some, something that's not uniform in a field. I think that's a common area that you and I might use drone deploy, and maybe trying to understand, is this just a couple of spots in the field? Is this something that's a pattern? And the one thing I love about drone deploy, when you fly it, you can measure, right? You think about, you can look at a base image and do that, but I can look at the field like exactly the way it looks like basically the same day and do some measurements. It's really great. And in LA, I also think you and I have both been asked to do a lot of flights looking at maybe some tile issues, because the great thing about those flights is they're geo-referenced and you can measure. And if there is maybe an issue, we can send links to our growers, or you can have that archive forever to have that. But that's something, LA, I think you've probably done, and I know I've done several of those as well.
Yeah, so I think you pointed that out well. There's season-long options. So outside of when just the crop is growing itself, you look at earlier spring, maybe it's just looking at the soil itself. And like you said, uncovering some of those tile issues. As you work yourself through the growing season, you've got the stand assessment piece, working through plant health throughout the summer, livestock inventories I mentioned. And then even in the winter, I think it's just nice to be able to take some of these images that you captured throughout the growing season, identify maybe some of the management practices that you uncovered that we need to adapt or fix for that next growing season. And so it's really a tool that I think overall helps us uncover some issues that we maybe might not have otherwise seen. And you hit on the fact, like the measurement tool and identifying patterns. When we're standing on the ground in a field, it can be hard to understand sometimes, is there a pattern to this? But, truly when you're getting that bird's eye view, it uncovers a lot of helpful information that can help you come to a conclusion on what those issues could be.
Yeah, so a fast-moving space. I'm amazed how much has changed in 2 or 3 years, and it'll be awesome to see where it goes. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to tune in next week.
You've been listening to Today in Agronomy on KFIL AM 1060. If you've missed part of the show or want to hear more, check out the show page at kfilradio.com or with the 103.1 KFIL app. Stay connected with Allie and Josh on Twitter. It's at Allie GYs, WISE, and at Josh Schaffner to submit your questions for the show. Tune in next Wednesday for the next Today in Agronomy on KFIL AM 1060.